Hong Kong looks normal from the outside, but the city runs on systems so strange, efficient, and wildly inventive they feel imported from the future. Today, we're diving into 12 real features of Hong Kong that every major city wishes it had, and most people never even notice. 1. A hidden backstage city behind every mall. Most people walk through Hong Kong's malls and podium complexes without realizing that a second city runs directly behind the walls. Beneath the polished floors and storefronts is a continuous interior world built entirely for movement, logistics, and maintenance rather than public use. Staff pass through these spaces every hour of the day, pushing carts, hauling goods, and clearing waste in a rhythm that never intersects with the crowds outside. The corridors are narrow, the ceilings low, and the lighting deliberately functional, creating an environment shaped by efficiency rather than design. What makes this system remarkable is how seamlessly it connects. A cleaner can leave one tower, cross into another, and reach a third without ever stepping outdoors. The passageways link loading bays, refuse rooms, freight lifts, and mechanical spaces into a single operational chain that spans entire blocks. From the inside, the boundaries between properties disappear. The buildings behave like one large machine with multiple access points. These routes also absorb the noise, vibration, and clutter that would overwhelm public areas if they were exposed. Deliveries arrive through back entrances, waste leaves through hidden docks, and maintenance teams move unseen between tasks. The public experiences only the polished surface, unaware of the constant motion happening just a few meters away. This backstage city keeps the visible one running, and once you grasp its scale, the malls above feel less like isolated structures and more like the outer shell of a much larger system. 2. A multi-level pedestrian world above traffic. Hong Kong's busiest districts are stitched together by a pedestrian world that floats above the traffic. What began as a handful of footbridges gradually expanded as developers added their own segments, creating a raised network that now spans entire neighborhoods. Commuters step off the street, ride a short escalator, and suddenly enter a level where cars, buses, and crosswalks no longer matter. The shift feels subtle at first, but the efficiency becomes obvious the moment you start walking. The elevated paths cut directly through malls, podiums, and office towers, forming routes that ignore the slow rhythm of the roads below. Long spans connect buildings that would otherwise require multiple street crossings, and the walkways rarely force detours. During peak hours, this upper level absorbs crowds that would overwhelm the pavements, keeping foot traffic moving even when the streets are jammed. Shops and cafes line the edges, turning the bridges into commercial corridors suspended above the city. Because the walkways are sheltered, they stay usable in heavy rain, intense sun, and the humid heat that slows movement at ground level. Many residents plan their commutes around this elevated layer, choosing routes that let them cross districts without touching the street once. The system isn't centrally planned, yet it functions with surprising coherence. Each new connection strengthens the whole, and over time the raised paths have become one of Hong Kong's most efficient forms of urban circulation. 3. Stairwell micro shops in buildings never designed for retail. Walk into one of Hong Kong's older walk-up buildings and you may find a tiny shop perched on a stair landing, operating in a space barely large enough for a chair. These micro-businesses occupy corners that were never intended for commercial use, yet they've become some of the most distinctive features of the city's older architecture. The buildings were constructed with every rentable square meter in mind, leaving behind narrow ledges and awkward pockets that couldn't fit an apartment, but could support a counter and a single worker. Over time, residents turned these leftover spaces into small shops that serve the immediate needs of the neighborhood. The scale of each kiosk dictates what it can offer. A key cutter sets up a small grinder on a wooden board. A cobbler keeps a few tools and a stack of soles within arm's reach. A vendor selling herbal snacks arranges jars along the railing. Everything is designed to be reachable without standing up, because there simply isn't room to move around. These shops stay sheltered from rain, heat, and the unpredictable flow of the street, giving them a stability that street-level stalls don't always enjoy. Their overhead is minimal, and their visibility to residents climbing the stairs keeps business steady. Many have become informal social checkpoints where neighbors exchange quick updates before continuing their climb. From the outside, the buildings look ordinary, but inside, the staircases reveal a quiet layer of commerce woven directly into the ascent. 4. Escalator chains that replace entire bus routes. Hong Kong's steep districts force the city to treat vertical movement as seriously as horizontal travel. Instead of relying solely on stairs or switchback roads, long sequences of escalators carry people up and down the slopes in a steady, uninterrupted flow. The most famous example is the central mid-level system, but similar chains appear inside malls, residential estates, and hillside complexes across the city. Each run feels less like a single escalator and more like a slow-moving conveyor belt designed for pedestrians. These escalator chains operate on a schedule shaped by the daily rhythm of the neighborhoods they serve. In the morning, the direction points downhill to funnel residents toward the business districts. By late afternoon, the flow reverses, lifting thousands of people back toward the mid-slope homes scattered across the hills. The shift happens quietly, but the effect is dramatic. Entire commutes hinge on the timing of these direction changes. Covered sections protect riders from rain, heat, and humidity, making the escalators reliable even in weather that slows movement at street level. Many of the runs connect directly into podium floors, footbridges, and office entrances, allowing commuters to transition between levels without climbing a single step. Shops and cafes have settled along the route, turning what began as a practical mobility solution into a lively corridor threaded through the hillside. For many residents, these escalators aren't conveniences. They're essential infrastructure that reshapes how the city is navigated. 5. Rooftop farms floating above the city. Hong Kong's rooftops reveal a side of the city that most people never imagine. Small gardens growing above the noise, tucked onto flat roofs that were never meant to host anything more than water tanks and ventilation units. Over time, residents began turning these unused surfaces into improvised farming plots, creating a layer of greenery suspended above the streets. Some gardens belong to families cultivating herbs and leafy greens for daily meals, while others are maintained by community groups experimenting with compact urban farming techniques. Each plot reflects the personality of the people who tend it, from neatly arranged planters to improvised beds built from recycled materials. The elevation gives these gardens advantages that ground-level spaces rarely enjoy. Sunlight reaches the rooftops for most of the day, breezes keep the air moving, and pests are far less common than in street-level soil. Lightweight containers and modular beds prevent excessive load on older structures, allowing the gardens to grow without compromising the buildings beneath them. Simple watering systems, rain barrels, hoses, and drip lines keep the plants alive without the need for heavy equipment. These rooftops also serve as quiet retreats in a city known for its density. A few steps above the nearest stairwell, the noise fades and the skyline opens. From street level, the buildings appear purely commercial or residential. But from higher vantage points, the rooftops reveal scattered pockets of cultivation woven into the vertical landscape. They soften the city's profile and offer residents a rare sense of calm above the urban rush. 6. A fresh food supply chain that never stops moving. Hong Kong's wet markets run on a supply rhythm that feels closer to a heartbeat than a logistics system. Instead of relying on large storage rooms or long-term refrigeration, vendors receive small deliveries throughout the day, keeping produce, seafood, and meat in constant motion. This rapid cycle means goods rarely sit still for more than a few hours, and freshness becomes a function of speed rather than stockpiling. The system works because wholesalers operate overnight, sourcing from farms, fisheries, and cross-border suppliers before dawn. Most stalls are compact, leaving almost no room for excess inventory. That constraint forces vendors to judge quality instantly and adjust orders as the day unfolds. A fish seller may take only what they can move by lunchtime, while a tofu vendor restocks multiple times before closing. Ice, misting setups, and insulated containers help maintain temperature without the heavy refrigeration found in supermarkets, keeping the stalls flexible and mobile. Customers shop frequently, reinforcing the cycle. Many residents buy ingredients daily, trusting the vendor's expertise and the speed of the supply chain. Unsold goods rarely go to waste. They're discounted, repurposed, or returned through long-standing relationships with suppliers. The entire system depends on movement, goods arriving, selling, and leaving in a continuous loop. It's a model built on trust, pace, and precision, and it produces a level of freshness that larger, slower systems struggle to match. 7. Ventilation shafts, hidden inside buildings. Hong Kong's rail system stays cool thanks to a network of ventilation shafts that most people walk past without realizing what they do. Instead of placing giant vents on the street, the city hides many of them inside commercial buildings, blending them into facades that look like ordinary mechanical rooms. These intakes pull warm, stale air out of the tunnels and push cooler air back in, keeping temperatures stable for both passengers and equipment. The system works quietly, but its impact is enormous, especially during peak hours when packed trains generate intense heat. The fans inside these shafts operate on a constantly shifting schedule. When train frequency increases, the airflow ramps up to counter the rising temperature underground. During quieter periods, the system switches to a maintenance cycle that clears dust and humidity before the morning rush begins. The machinery is powerful enough to move huge volumes of air, yet the public rarely hears more than a faint hum through the walls. Placing the vents inside buildings solves several problems at once. It frees up pedestrian space at street level, avoids obstructing sidewalks, and keeps the equipment protected from weather. It also allows the shafts to rise higher, improving airflow without disrupting the city's dense ground-level environment. Most people never notice these disguised structures, but they are essential to keeping the underground network safe, cool, and reliable throughout the year. 8. Mini temples embedded in shops and corridors. Walk through Hong Kong's commercial buildings, and you'll occasionally spot a small glow of incense tucked into a corner that seems too narrow to serve any purpose. These shrines occupy slivers of space left over between storerooms, service corridors, and structural columns, areas too small for retail but perfect for a compact altar. Their presence reflects a long-standing habit of marking out a place for protection and good fortune inside the spaces where people work. Shop owners maintain them with quiet regularity, lighting incense, placing fruit, and refreshing offerings as naturally as they restock shelves. The shrines vary widely in scale. Some are little more than a ceramic dish behind a counter, while others occupy narrow rooms that feel like small sanctuaries hidden inside the building's interior. Ventilation fans keep the smoke contained, allowing rituals to continue without affecting customers or neighboring shops. Despite their modest size, these corners carry a sense of continuity that contrasts sharply with the fast turnover of commercial districts. Different tenants often maintain their own shrines within the same building, each with its own practices and rhythms. They sit so quietly within the architecture that many people pass them without noticing, even though they're tended daily. Their placement isn't decorative, it's functional, cultural, and deeply embedded in the routines of the people who rely on them. These small spaces create a thread of tradition running through otherwise modern interiors, adding a layer of meaning that isn't visible from the street, but shapes the atmosphere of the buildings from within. 9. Ferries that double as moving viewpoints. Hong Kong's ferries offer a kind of movement that feels completely different from anything on land. Instead of weaving through traffic or diving underground, the boats cut straight across the harbor in a single uninterrupted line. The moment you step onto the deck, the city rearranges itself into a series of shorelines, rather than a continuous wall of towers. Districts that seem fused together from the road suddenly separate into distinct silhouettes, each with its own rhythm and architectural character. The ferries run on fixed schedules that stay reliable even when the roads are jammed. Their pace is steady, unhurried, and almost meditative compared to the intensity of the city around them. As the boat moves, you pass working piers, shipyards, and cargo terminals, places most residents rarely see up close despite living beside one of the world's busiest harbors. The ride becomes a moving observation platform, revealing details that disappear when traveling by bus, train, or car. Inside the cabin, the setup is simple: open windows, metal benches, and the constant hum of the engines. Regular riders know which seats catch the best breeze or the best light depending on the time of day. Tourists treat the ferries as an experience, but locals use them because they're efficient, cheap, and predictable. The result is a mode of transport that doubles as one of the city's calmest viewpoints, offering a perspective that no elevated walkway or hillside lookout can replicate. 10. Reservoirs buried under parks and playgrounds. Hong Kong stores much of its drinking water in places that look nothing like infrastructure. Beneath hillsides, playgrounds, and quiet neighborhood parks sit enormous reinforced reservoirs holding millions of liters of treated water. From the surface, these areas appear completely ordinary: trees, benches, jogging paths. But directly underneath is a controlled environment engineered with the precision of a laboratory. Thick concrete walls, internal columns, and ventilation systems keep the water cool and stable throughout the year. The location of these reservoirs is strategic. By placing them close to dense residential districts, the city maintains steady water pressure even for high-rise towers that stretch dozens of floors into the air. Maintenance crews access the chambers through small service buildings that resemble utility sheds, giving no hint of the scale below. Inside, the air is cool, the lighting is minimal, and the space feels more like an underground cathedral than a storage tank. Burying the reservoir solves several problems at once. It preserves valuable surface land in a city where open space is scarce. It protects the water from temperature swings and contamination, and it allows the surrounding neighborhoods to use the land above as parks, sports fields, or community spaces without ever knowing what lies beneath. Most residents walk across these areas daily without realizing they're standing on top of one of the city's most important systems, an invisible layer of infrastructure quietly supporting millions of people. 11. Missing floors removed for feng shui. Walk into a Hong Kong elevator and you may notice something strange. Entire floor numbers simply don't exist. The building hasn't lost them. Developers intentionally skip numbers like 4, 14, and sometimes whole sequences because their Cantonese pronunciations resemble words linked to misfortune. What began as a cultural preference gradually became a standard practice across residential towers, office blocks, and hotels. The result is a vertical numbering system that looks logical at first glance, but hides deliberate gaps shaped by language and belief. The physical floors are still there, only the labels change. A 20th floor apartment might sit lower than its name suggests, while a 28th floor unit may be chosen specifically for its auspicious sound. Some buildings replace missing numbers with letters, creating sequences like 12A, 12B, and 12C to maintain a smooth progression. Others jump directly from 12 to 15 without explanation, leaving newcomers momentarily confused as the elevator display skips ahead. These choices influence more than navigation. They affect property value, buyer demand, and even the perceived character of a building. Developers know that avoiding unlucky numbers can make units easier to sell, especially in competitive districts. Over time, the practice has become so common that many residents no longer question it. The numbering simply reflects the cultural logic of the city. What looks like an architectural quirk is actually a linguistic system embedded into the skyline, shaping how people move through buildings without altering the structures themselves. 12. Storm drain tunnels. Big enough to swallow a river. Hong Kong's hills hide a storm drain system built on a scale that feels almost impossible for a city this dense. Instead of relying solely on street-level gutters, the city carved massive diversion tunnels deep into the rock, creating underground channels capable of swallowing sudden surges of rainwater. These tunnels activate the moment heavy storms begin, capturing runoff before it can reach low-lying districts. The system is designed for the kind of rainfall that would overwhelm most cities within minutes. During typhoons, hillside intakes pull water straight into the tunnels, sending it through reinforced conduits that run toward the harbor. Gravity does most of the work, allowing the system to move enormous volumes without constant mechanical pumping. Sensors monitor water levels in real time, adjusting gates and flow paths to prevent pressure from building in any single chamber. The tunnels are large enough for maintenance crews to walk through during dry periods, inspecting the walls for cracks, debris, or signs of stress. At street level, only a few discrete intake structures hint at the scale of what lies below. Most residents pass them without realizing they're connected to a network that protects entire neighborhoods from flash flooding. By routing stormwater underground, Hong Kong keeps reclaimed land, coastal districts, and hillside communities safe during extreme weather. The system works quietly, but its impact is enormous, an engineered shield hidden beneath the city's everyday rhythm. Once you see how Hong Kong actually works, the city stops feeling chaotic and starts looking engineered. These 12 systems aren't just clever, they're proof that urban design can be faster, denser, and smarter than anything most cities attempt.